You are in for an interesting ride.
Hello and welcome to another ETN News Piles episode. This one is a little bit different. I'm absolutely fascinated by all manner of subject within the UFO and much wider sphere. And this one involves the Schumann Resonance and time slips. And I think you are going to be absolutely fascinated by my guest, who is Starfire Tor. When I heard about the Schumann Resonance from her perspective, it kind of rang a bell for me. Now, I've got no background in researching the Schumann resonance, but I've been aware of its changes, movements like for sun flares, solar flares, that kind of thing. And of course, I know that it impacts us. And apparently it's also impacted the ozone layer of the Earth. But I'm not going to tell you any more about that. Starfire Tor. Welcome to the ET Newsroom, Starfire.
Thank you, Joanne, and thank you for inviting me onto your show.
I wanted to ask you how far back you have gone looking at the Schumann resonance when you began to notice something a little bit different.
Since I discovered time shifts and the core matrix and timeline edits, I look at every piece of frequency and the energy that goes on with the planet: geomagnetic storms, earthquakes, volcanoes, lightning, everything. And Earth's Schumann resonance basically was originally said to reflect the electromagnetic background noise of planet Earth. And more particularly, it picks up lightning activity all over the planet. And those are the major things and nothing more. Now, a lot of other people who are very interested in the Schumann resonance believe that geomagnetic storms affect it. They do not. They think that earthquakes affect it. They do not. They think that tornadoes affect it. They do not. They think that volcanoes affect it. They do not. And the reason why I know that they do not is because I have made a decades-long research project of looking to see what the graphs and readings from the Earth Schumann resonance look like when all of these other variables are in play. And there is absolutely no constant correlation scientifically when, let's say, we have a major earthquake like in Indonesia or Japan. Some people believed that there would be an uptick in the Schumann resonance or geomagnetic storms would rise up. But the true fact is, not necessarily. Sometimes they do, sometimes they know. No, there's nothing solid there. So why does the Schumann resonance sometimes have such a dramatic uptick in energy when none of these other factors are impacting it? And so as a scientist, I needed to know that answer because I already knew that our planet naturally undergoes timeline edits. I knew that that's a frequency-driven thing. I knew that the core matrix is the big driver behind it. And I also knew that activity on our sun can trigger what are known as time shifts. That's when the time actually shifts. It actually does. The space-time continuum is moved. And it wasn't until recently, a long time after I discovered it, that NASA actually put out an experiment and discovered that, our space-time continuum is altered when certain activities on the sun occur. Time is different between the 93 million miles between the sun and the Earth. That's wonderful. I'm so glad they caught up with me. I don't have all the big deal tech that they do, but I have my own. So I know how to do it.
I think it was the 11th to 12th, and there might be another couple of days included there, Schumann resonance, and your comments about that, which mentioned something I hadn't heard of before in this context, and that was the reinstatement of the true core matrix and I don't know how it was shifted out, or maybe the old matrix, which had apparently been in place for thousands of years. And you know what? I thought, I know that's true. Isn't that interesting? I just felt that. I don't know myself what I was responding to exactly.
I'll try to make this as brief but concise as possible. Everything in our universe is actually a resurrection. There was a universe before ours, and a huge black hole complex absorbed us. This is the way the universe works. It's the beginning and it's the end. And then there's a phoenix resurrection. It takes a long time for it to happen. But when a universe is being pulled into a black hole complex, sometimes there's something called the ergosphere that rotates around this black hole complex. So as all of the material from the universe is being sucked in, some of it gets pulled into the ergosphere instead, which means that it's been saved. But this is only remnants, not the entire universe. There is something in the universe called the spark of life. These are my names. This is what I call them. Spark of life, SOL, or soul. Every particle of everything everywhere, no matter which universe you are in, no matter what dimension, no matter what frequency, no matter what coexisting timeline, no matter what you are in, that spark of life is there. So when the elements, the remnants, were pulled into the ergosphere, the spark of life began to regenerate. And this created something called, I used to call it the Matrix, but then years later, this wonderful movie came out called The Matrix. And people who followed my work got very confused. They thought that the science fiction plot line to The Matrix was what I was talking about. I was having a very tough time trying to explain, no, that's a movie. No, this is my science. So I renamed The Matrix the Core Matrix. And once I did that, took about a year, but people began to separate the two and they understood The Matrix as a movie. Now we come today and the past few years, and some people have resurrected the movie plot line and they think that we have to get out of the Matrix. No, they have it wrong. As we are being phoenixed, regenerated into the universe that we are in now, the core matrix and the spark of life only had remnants to work with. So we are recreated from remnants, not the whole. It's why we really don't know who we are, where we're from, all sorts of gaps in our knowledge. Souls were also brought back in. And it's also why not every physical form has a soul. That doesn't mean that somebody is bad. It just means that not every physical being in the entire reconstructed universe has a soul. Don't worry about it. In our resurrected universe, like in the one before, we have something called dark matter. Now, that's a phrase that was not created by me. I just like it. Dark matter is the substance that is the glue that holds all of these resurrected elements together. And they call it dark matter, not because it's evil or bad, but because modern day human technology cannot visually see it. They've only just recently been able to see little itty bitty pieces of it because the tech has advanced. But we know that dark matter is there just the way that we know air is there because we see the wind. We know we breathe it. We see what the wind and the air does. So we know that air exists, but we cannot visually see it because we can only see within certain frequencies. We can only hear within certain frequencies. Okay, so dark matter, just like humans and every other species of being in the universe, was resurrected from remnants. The dark matter is also resurrected from remnants, which means it's not whole. It's not complete, just like we're not. Just like every other species is not complete.
It sounds like there's almost a kind of a panspermia
Yes.
element to it. I don't know whether you think that perhaps other intelligences from other universes could have been part of our construction or had a hand in it.
Remind me of that in about 20 seconds and I'll answer it. Dark matter, part of it is not whole. It can't help itself. It's not a sentient being. It is an element of the universe, absolutely necessary for us to exist, for the entire universe to exist, but it simply doesn't function properly. So I call it the dark matter aberration. It wants to make itself whole. It also is part of the spark of life. And so all of us want to be whole. We're just not sure what that means. I mean, some of us know a little bit more than others, but there's always this surge to do better, be better, find out more, who we are, where we come from. There's a lot of in there where a lot of imagination takes hold. But for the most part, the dark matter aberration is the same way. It tries to heal itself. And the way that it tries to heal itself is it's looking for more energy to insert into itself to reconstruct itself better. And that's not possible. It's just not designed to do that. But it became a cosmic vampire. The dark matter aberration is the source of all evil in the universe. Every single speck of evil comes from this. And anywhere that it can infiltrate to vampire the energy from planets, habitats, anywhere, it alters that place and it changes it. So thousands and thousands of years ago, the dark matter aberration did come to our solar system.
Can I just, to clarify it for me, because that may have missed a link here. So the dark matter of which we're also made up of, is that right? From your...
Well, we're not made up of dark matter. We're just held together by dark matter.
Okay. And so that very aspect now has become like a rogue element in the life of the universe?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Okay.
Not all of dark matter, obviously, because it's working and functioning quite well. There's just part of it, just like part of humans, are very susceptible to falling prey to the dark matter aberration evil. And the way that this cosmic vampire works is it just overtakes its prey and it needs to manufacture energy. So when it sees a solar system like ours and it sees a planet like ours, and we are so not connected to looking out for the dangers of the dark matter aberration, there are ways to create fields around planets and habitats that can just keep it out. It is not hard to do, but if you don't know that it's there, there's nothing you can do. And once it takes over a species, a planet, or whoever, they're gone. And so their whole job is to work for the dark matter aberration, or the DMA. That's what happened here on planet Earth. And unfortunately, we were invaded thousands of years ago by another species of, well, we call them ETs because they're off-world. And there was a huge battle that happened here on planet Earth. Now, I'll stop here and I'll go to panspermia, because this is where this all comes together. When the Earth was its molten form and it was still forming as a planet, another planet actually impacted with it and they merged. And scientists even know this today because there's something very strange about the center of our planet. It's lopsided. There are things that are wrong there. One side of the planet has X amount of minerals and compounds and the other side doesn't. And so they know that Earth is two different planets put together. This is science.
I was going to say, I think that's quite well known as Marduk. Is that right?
No, it's not Marduk. That's from the Sumerian clay tablets. That's something different.
Oh, okay.
This is something genuinely that is here now. Earth is formed from two separate planetary bodies. They merged. Now, panspermia happens when, and I write about this a lot. It's on my Facebook page. It's on my everywhere. So panspermia happens when genetic quantities of life is embedded into a planetary body, or they do very well with comets, which are made of ice, very, very cold. There are biological forms that can embed into ice, and they can last for millions of years in that stage. Then they impact with a viable planetary orb or force. All the right conditions happen and life forms. This is how Earth began. The majority of the panspermia that came to Earth and then afterward, impact after impact after impact, not through here, but other planets too, Mars, same thing happened. There is I'm going to call it a law within the universe that says if that's your panspermia, if you, other species out there, if you can identify that your biologics are now the life forms on a planet where there's no necessarily intelligent species, you have the right to come there and nurture your own biologics. And so thousands and thousands and thousands of years, way after this initial panspermia collision happened, something that I call the ET Earth Consortium. It's a whole bunch of different species because there was more than one biological, came to Earth and helped to nurture the rise of our modern day humans. But this was way after the dinosaurs. This was way after reptiles. This was a more recent thing. Even whales were on the planet 50 million years ago. So this controlled scientific panspermia nurturing by all these different species came here. And this is normal. This is not unusual. And I'm going to call these the good guys. Then came the bad guys. More recently, thousands of years ago. And they had no panspermia rights here. And they were also recognized as being dark matter aberration infested. So a war. This was war. And that war is going on today, right here, planet Earth, and in our solar system. All of these parties are still here, and it's a problem.
Can I just ask about the aberrant dark matter again? So in infecting of people, is this in terms that we could imagine, I don't know, for want of a better term, like a virus? Is that how it is insinuated into the intelligence framework or the biology of, and I'm not leaving out a planetary body either.
If anybody would like to go to my podcast with Pigtail Girl, The Time Chronicles, you'll find several shows on this, loads of photos and pictures and graphics. But this element, which, by the way, happened to be what people refer to as reptilians or Dracos. But please be aware, this is so important, that that's just one faction of reps. Part of the ET Earth Consortium, what I call the good guys, also have reps in them. And they are not the same because the ET Earth Consortium are not DMA infested. But the ones who came in who wanted Earth for the DMA and for themselves, when they came in and they started to overtake the humans who were here, this altered the trajectory of the planet. And so it eventually flipped us out of our proper matrix and into what I call a false matrix. I call it bizarro world, where everything is upside down.
And do you have a kind of timeline for that, Starfire?
I can just tell you that this all happened before there were pyramids or Stonehenge, so long ago. But the majority of modern history and modern archaeology is after these people came in and the war that happened. There's very little of the pre-Earth conditions that are left. The Earth was decimated. A lot went underground where the ETs still are. The bad reps that are still here, they're still doing damage. But something happened quite recently. People who were knowledgeable got together and were able to put up the shielding around Earth that prevented any more DMA energy from entering our planet, so that all that was left inside of the shielding was all that was there. And what I call the minions that were on the planet that were just making a mess of it, putting the false matrix in, they've been using up what they have and they're running out. And so when that happened, suddenly our timeline flipped, the dominant timeline flipped from the false matrix, which had been around for thousands of years, putting us on the verge of destruction, and the proper matrix came in recently.
I have been captured myself by a piece of information which kind of resonated with me.
I just wanted to say that in these days, so many people are saying, we got to get out of the matrix. This is wrong. When you think you want to get out of the matrix, that's the proper matrix. That's where you want to be. It's the false matrix that you want to get out of. If people would simply adjust their thinking on this and understand what I'm explaining, then they will stop helping the false matrix, because that's what they're doing. When you keep saying you want to get out of the matrix, you're putting a belief system into a science fiction plot line, and you want to be in the proper matrix, out of the false matrix. That's all I want to say.
as well, just talking about that, I think people, really feel that there is this web over the globe, actually, of those who are not for the highest good of the planet or humanity, and feel that that is perhaps part of what they've got to escape. Was something that really got my attention, because when you talked about the core matrix, I hadn't heard that phrase before. I thought that made sense. It resonated with me.
This January the 8th, 2023, Schumann Resonance chart shows many energy developments. The timeline reboot and data loss that began on January the 2nd, 2023 and ended January the 6th, 2023 UTC time went back online with no obvious rises in Earth's energy. The core matrix was resting its more obvious timeline edit activities. Today was very different. Earth energy amped up with a series of general white zone timeline edit packages mixed with broad frequency laser focused timeline energy spikes. I cannot tell you exactly why this timeline reboot happened. Reboots usually manifest because something catastrophic happened to the planet, such as an asteroid strike or some form of human or ET caused event. Through a timeline reboot, the core matrix resurrects the planet minus the catastrophic event. Because we were recently flipped back into our proper matrix and out of our thousands of years old false matrix, all subsequent timeline edits are geared toward keeping the proper matrix stabilized and advancing forward through human and allied endeavors that are physical, psychic, and spiritual. The evolution of the planet is directly tied to the evolution of its human caretakers.
It's replaced or somehow shoot out the other one, which is the old one. Really, the reason I wanted to share this insight that you have, because I think it's really important. This is exactly what it gives us. It gives us a bit of a framework in which to understand. Before, we've been flailing around a little bit.
There's a reason and a rhyme to it all. And I just happened to I stumbled across it decades ago. I mean, I didn't start out looking for the core matrix because, quite honestly, I had no idea it existed. I stumbled across it because I was trying to find the scientific cause of the paranormal, the scientific cause of being psychic. I'm very psychic, so I wanted to know what's going on here. How does that work? I mean, I'm pretty big on precognition. I've got a very high degree rate documented, and I wanted to know, how does that work? What's going on? And as I was doing that, I stumbled across that we were existing in more than one timeline at the same time. At first, when I got the evidence of this, I didn't want to believe it. I mean, it made life harder for me because now I had to learn about something that nobody in the whole world knew about. I mean, I just didn't say a word for years because I wanted to have all of the evidence that I could possibly muster. And I'm talking physical evidence, which I have loads of. And what I discovered was we live in an unknown number of coexisting timelines. And I call them coexisting timelines because all of our timelines exist in the same space. They're not parallel timelines, which is like train tracks running parallel to each other. No. We're existing in exactly the same space. We're just separated by our individual frequencies. If you think of the old radios on their individual frequencies, so you have like a dial or a knob or something, and you can change AM or FM on your car radio or at home or whatever. And depending on where you put that dial is a frequency, and you're picking up that particular radio station. That's how these timelines work. If you're in tune with a particular coexisting timeline, you're in there. Now, the way that the core matrix works that out, because the core matrix stores and streams all coexisting timelines. And the one that we are conscious of is what I call the dominant coexisting timeline. The core matrix makes sure that we're all in the same boat together. Nobody is flipping off into their own timeline. That's nonsense. People who say, oh, yes, you can timeline jump, go where you want to. That's not true.
Believe it. Is that a good point for me to share about an experience I had so many years ago now?
Oh, please do.
Well, I'm really intrigued about what your response will be. And what happened was I was really...
You think it's a one-off event?
As far as I'm consciously aware. As far as I'm aware. So, but I was completely conscious of the event. And it's a simple event. I was falling asleep into a very deep sleep in the mid of the day. As I was going into this deep sleep, I just put out a thought almost casually, I'm going to change my timeline. And I don't know, I'm going to come off my current timeline. And I fell straight asleep. And as I was falling asleep in that very process, I could actually feel my face skin tightening up. And I really could. Now, I was just in my 30s, so I wasn't actually showing much age on my face. Then I was woken out of that deep sleep by a close friend. So they came in and I was still half asleep, so I really hadn't come to. And they just looked at me in astonishment and went, oh my God, your face. I went, oh God, what? And they said, you haven't got any lines. Everything is, it's all gone. I went, what? And I didn't even look in any mirror. I didn't, because you know what? I just didn't believe it. I thought, oh, that's just nonsense. And I really could kick myself all the way from here to Kingdom, because I thought, had I held that energy of what had happened and what was being witnessed, more to the point, is I think I would have continued on that more youthful timeline. And I don't know where I would have ended up. I mean, I'm thinking about that.
Well, I have a couple of questions for you first. Have you ever had a dream that came true? A conversation, meeting someone, deja vu in your waking life?
Deja vu, but not necessarily dreams, but the odd deja vu, not much, but...
Okay. Have you had any circumstances in your life, say, picked up a phone before it rang?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I know, and you know who's on the end, yeah.
Okay. And any other psychic events in your life? Even the smallest little thing, all the time, right?
Not all the time, but there's a lot of stuff that's happened since I've started this work and a few things that happened prior to it.
I do actually understand what happened to you.
Okay.
Yeah. What is unique for you is like, oh, another one, because my research is pretty vast and goes back a long ways. You encountered one of two things or a combination of the two things. The first one is something that I call reality shift manifestation. I developed a whole protocol for reality shift manifestation. You're not really changing timelines. You're actually manifesting. This is a normal, natural human ability. You said to me earlier that you were thinking about changing timelines. Let's hold it right there for a second. Do you remember the date at all?
No, you know what? I really didn't pay it much attention. It's only as I've pondered on it, as years have gone by, I thought, oh my God, that was big.
Yeah, it was big, actually.
I know that it would have been in probably a spring or a summer, because I know it was light outside and things like that.
If you had known the exact date, I probably could have looked in my records to tell you if there was a time shift or a timeline that had happening at that time. But I can tell you that for most of the people on planet Earth, the timeline switches, edits out. Think of a timeline as if somebody is writing a book or a script and you save it to your hard drive. Then you come back and you pull it up, and now you're ready to do some editing, some switching of this, the dialogue, whatever, You keep a copy of all the versions. All those versions of the same piece are various coexisting timelines. And you can go back to them and visit them, and you may want to pull something from something earlier and put it back into the newest edited version. But the newest edited version is your dominant version. That's what the dominant coexisting timeline is. Because you're the author of that piece, you have knowledge and memory of all the different versions of your work. But somebody coming in and reading your work, who only sees the version you want them to see, only knows that. They don't have any idea of all of the iterations of your volume that you have. That's how the core matrix works with our planet. It also has a thing called reality assimilation, so that humans for the most part, have no idea that a timeline edit has even happened. But when timeline edits are remembered, that means that your brain has accelerated. It has grown. And once you experience something like that, which is what you experienced, your brain is forever more open to more of these experiences. When I started to share with the public what I knew about timeline edits and the core matrix, thousands of people from all over the world said, "Oh my gosh, thank goodness you now have explained what happened to me. I'm not crazy. This makes total sense." And, this is how people began to listen to what I was saying.
I think I was more annoyed because I would have really liked to have lived that other timeline, and I haven't been able to reproduce it. That's the interesting thing too.
Well, here's the thing. Your brain, for reasons that only your brain knows, remembered you in a pre-existing, coexisting timeline that happened at the time that you were in that sleep mode or that whatever mode, that tiredness mode. In fact, your being tired made you very vulnerable to everything that was happening around you. You have a certain functioning brain anyway, which is, I can tell, you're part left brain, part right brain. And that's a very, in my opinion, because I don't have a barrier between my left and right brain, they meld completely. So when someone is left brain and right brain, they are more apt to have a remembrance of a pre-dominant timeline and the one you're in. So that's what happened to you. You started your pre-tiredness zone in one coexisting timeline. There was a timeline edit, which is completely normal. It had nothing to do with you. Nothing. It was not targeting you. You did not create it. You remembered it. So people who remember these timeline edits, sometimes they can look in a mirror and go, they don't recognize themselves for a split second or 30 seconds, and then they adjust. That's called timeline edit assimilation, because we alter. The world alters. I mean, it could be as simple as your favorite shirt was blue, now it's green. The color of your car changes. The tint to your hair changes. I mean, the smallest little itty bitty thing is all you notice, and that's all it takes. That's all it takes. And then whole buildings can come and go. I've written articles on investigations that I've done where a building has appeared in a day, in a second, in a blink of an eye.
Without giving any details away, it is about a building disappearing. Very briefly, the story is two people went to a woods to go for a walk, parked their car near a house. Across the road was another house a little bit further up. They had their walk, went away. Some maybe weeks later, another time, they went back looking for the same place, same location, couldn't find it. And they spent 4 hours going up and down lanes. And these are people who are very used to being orienteering even. They finally came up to this lane and said, well, this has to be it, because look, there is that other house. They recognized the other building, but there was nothing to indicate there had been a building, and there had been an electrical pole or a telegraph pole, as well as a bench outside the property. And they described the property, and then they took some footage, and there's not even really a depression. And they've gone and looked at land registry and talked to locals. There's been nothing like that in that area ever. Sounds like an absolute candidate for what you're talking about.
It is exactly what I'm talking about. This type of thing, that is what I research. It is something I've written quite a bit about. I've talked about, I've done TV shows on it. Some people call it a time slip. It's happened to me personally. It happened to me when I was with Whitley and Ann Strieber. I mean, it is probably what we experienced was the most significant time slip ever recorded, ever documented, because it was a group of us and we actually did document it. But what happened to the people you're talking about is exactly what happened to us, and exactly what happened to thousands of other people. Is there was a time shift and their brains got caught into a pre-coexisting timeline. They left, and when they came back, the timeline, the edit had happened, and that structure was edited out of the planet. It was edited out of the timeline.
I mean, it is really interesting, Starfire, because I think I was telling you off camera that I'd written a book with Bill Brooks, whose story the book is about, an ex-soldier, musician, who had a lifetime of incredible encounters and abductions, but he didn't know until 44. Point is that after an absolutely humongous experience that he had no knowledge of immediately, he recalled driving onto the main road, which would have been a very busy road in the mid of England. And he said the weirdest thing began to happen. It's like cars down the ages began to appear. The traffic stopped. It's like suddenly there was no traffic, except for the odd vehicle coming through that was looking from another era, right back to the 30s.
An excerpt from chapter 16 of the book 44, based on an ex-British soldier's true story of lifelong encounters involving alien abduction. Just before I reached the island, I had naturally slowed down, ready to stop. I'd noticed a car that seemed to suddenly appear on the road coming around the island. It slowed down to a near stop. As it did so, it would only have been about 7 or 8 yards from me, easily close enough for me to look into the eyes of the driver, who was an older man, a farmer type with a very ruddy complexion and a hefty build. The other person in the front was a woman, and they appeared surprised at seeing me. At the same time as their car almost came to a halt, I saw the driver pointing at me. Then a passenger in the back leant forward to get a better look at me, although I didn't see them. I knew it was a woman by the very thin hand that I caught sight of. The car was old-fashioned with wooden sides and windows, plus a spare wheel on the back. My view of it was excellent from my slightly elevated position. The old vehicle, known as the Woody Ford, is virtually identical to the vehicle I saw. These were built from the early 1930s and 40s onwards, and I'd never seen one before. As this vehicle appeared to pass me, I inexplicably found myself 500 yards back up the road from where I'd just come. I was driving in exactly the same direction, i.e. towards this same island for the second time. A real Groundhog Day event with no idea of how that came to be.
A bit of an interaction with some people in this 1930s car.
Who would have been very startled at him.
They were absolutely startled. You have got it in one.
Very often, I've noticed in my own investigations of UFOs and ETs and anomalies, that people who have had authentic interaction with ETs, particularly in their craft, they become psychic, their brains open, and they cannot be shut. Sometimes they get a lot of poltergeist activity around them.
Yes,
you know,
paranormal.
very paranormal. Yes. They can be susceptible to other forces coming into their lives that they don't want. They can have these time slips and awarenesses of timeline edits. Normal. Yeah. Absolutely normal. Again, the person would have to be left and right brain compatible.
Well, this was a guy who was so locked out of anything like this that he believed up until he was 44 that nothing existed that was paranormal, spiritual, ET. He would have thought people like I were completely nuts. He also said about his experiences that they'd completely opened him, because he's a very broad guy in his thinking in lots of ways. But not for this, which is curious. He said it opened my eyes, and I don't know why they were so close. One of the other astonishing thing that happened to him, another major event, drove this massive piece, maybe 1/3 of a ton. It's a ball bearing for a ship made of phosphor bronze. That's another interesting point, apparently more expensive than gold. So this is, we're talking about 20, 25 years ago or more. Went with the van, picked up the load. He thought he came straight back, which was about 3/4 an hour each way, so an hour and a half, which would have had him back about 12 p.m., 12:30 at the latest. But he wasn't. He was back about 4 o'clock. And this is noted by the office and the people. They're all saying, well, what the heck's this? He's got no idea. He's had an abduction experience. This is where it's kind of messed with his head, because things are happening to him and he's got reactions to things that he doesn't know why, because he doesn't have the context. Anyway, they said, oh, well, never mind that. Let's go and get the metal. Blow me, the metal had gone. 1/3 of a ton, phosphor bronze, massive ball bearing, gone. And
Hmm.
if that isn't enough, the other absolutely mind-boggling experience, and then I'll finish. He did another delivery job, and it was over 2 days. It was a Monday and a Tuesday. So he picked up his load. He delivered the first job, which was the furthest distance. He stayed out overnight in his cab, pulled up to this field, had some supper and a coffee and a cigarette. Anyway, he had a major abduction experience.
By whom?
By some ETs, greys. In this
What
case.
size?
I think they were
What size?
I mean, this is
The short
major,
ones.
but the other major thing is when he had got back to the office the next day. So for him, this is Tuesday now. They said, "What are you doing back?" He said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "I've just finished delivering and picked it up yesterday." He said, No, we don't work Sunday." For them, it was Monday. But get this. So he had said that he had delivered everything as per the job. They started laughing and calling him Superman, and he was getting really irritated. Again, he'd got no context. He didn't know what people were talking about. And then the manager went off to call the depot where he'd just come from. And he said, "Oh, you got your brother working for you." Well, he did have a brother, but severely disabled, unable to work. Mike Smith, as he's now known, said, "What are you talking about?" There was his doppelganger still delivering. I mean, that
Same
is
thing.
just
It's the same thing.
with his doppelganger still delivering.
It's the doppelganger effect. It's the bilocation effect.
Yeah.
It's part of the time loss or time gain effect. It's all part of the same thing. You know that when someone is authentically interacted with ETs, that
Yeah.
doesn't stop. It
Oh,
starts
no.
at childhood and it continues on. And so you're going to have all sorts of different experiences depending on who the experiences are with.
He's had sort of the Greys, the Nordics, who said an interesting thing to him, and the reptilians. This is when he was about 9 or 10 in 1959 or 1960, and parked their craft.
What did the craft look like?
He said it looked like Donald Campbell's Bluebird. What that is, it's a land and water racing machine. Back in the 1960s, a guy called Donald Campbell was a UK racing guy. Streamlined thing with a wing up. Of course, nothing like the vehicles of the 1950s. But he said, "I just had been to see Buck Rogers at the cinema." He said, "So I just thought it was all normal." He said they were just a family of 4, 2 youngsters, and they asked me if I wanted to go for a ride. So that wasn't abduction. But before they took him for a ride, they asked him if that he had seen any reptiles. Well, he didn't know. But because he knew the area like the back of his hand, he said he hadn't seen anything because he would know if he'd seen anything different. They said to him, they made a statement. Actually, they said a couple of amazing things. They said that they had escaped their masters who would have made them slaves.
Really?
They told him that the planet was in trouble and would he help if he could. And he's just an enthusiastic kiddie. And he said, yeah, what do you want me to do? And they said, "Oh, you'll know at the time." Now he's coming up 73 and he's got no idea. And then they took him for a ride. The kids got him to use mind movement, moving a little sphere with his mind.
Telekinesis.
He said, "I can't do that." They said, "Oh, yes, you can." And he did. He maintains now that they must have done it for him. He said, "Because I can't do it now." They sped away from Earth, which he could see receding in one of the porthole windows. And they brought him back.
Where did they take him to?
They just took him for a ride. They didn't
Joyride.
land anywhere. I've never heard of anybody's life story that's included so much.
Most people who have had that experience don't talk about it.
Oh, no, he didn't. I mean, he only came to me in 2012 after a week of heart attacks and strokes, and he thought he was going to be dying then. He's had some more strokes and heart attacks since then.
Unfortunately, there are a number of people who come out into the public and tell falsehood about their ET UFO experiences, and it makes it very, very hard for real stories and real people who've had experiences to come out and share it.
And also, he was very fearful because he'd had a lot of issues with Freemasons. There we go. That was just another layer of things he had to deal with, and it was real persecution at some points. But bless him. He's been through a lot. Yeah.
Would you say that his ET UFO story is the most fascinating one?
His case is the most lifelong, incredible. And he said to me that I would have thought I had lost my mind gone to Jesus, whatever that was, had it not continued. And then I was aware. Not that he was aware of what happened when he was taken, but he was aware when he was going to be taken, and he experienced some of the effects and actually being taken materially. There was nobody to talk to.
Right.
And the only people that he knew around him were women who were meditating and talking about angels and stuff. And that's all very nice, but it didn't relate at all to his stuff. And when he told anybody, it scared them off. The poor guys had PTSD through it. There's no doubt about it. And so have a lot of people.
True. Very true. Where does your interest in UFOs and ETs begin?
I think I've just been on a developmental journey involving spirituality, and Colombian friends who has had a lot of contact with a guy called Sixto Paz Wells, who's an American Peruvian contactee since he was 17, and he's been around the world talking about his experiences, and he's been on off planet, and he's been in their ships, not a lot, but even consciously as well. And that guy I met and interviewed over her kitchen table a few years ago, and he's not crazy. There's nobody I've spoken to really, crazy or in need of mental health treatment at all. Maybe we can talk about the core matrix and the timelines and the spikes. That was so interesting to me. And you mentioned the angel.
Do you mean the angel wings that appeared in the Schumann Resonance?
This is the January 21 to 23, 2023 Schumann Resonance chart. The most interesting reading happened for 6 hours that started yesterday and spilled into the early part of the 23rd. What developed is a moderate upper chart double white zone. Because of their look, I call them angel wing zones. When white zones like this appear in a chart, it is a visual sign that global timeline edits have been enacted by the core matrix. I cannot tell you exactly what was in those global timeline edits, except to say that they would be involved in stabilizing the newly recovered proper matrix. The proper matrix hasn't been Earth dominant in thousands of years.
I read the Schumann Resonance in a very unique way. I see them through different eyes, and it's what the core matrix is doing on the planet, the changes in frequencies, and all of them are about timeline edits, and it's stabilizing our regained proper matrix. Everything that you're seeing now in the Schumann Resonance since this time, it happened at the end of October, late 2022. Sometimes on the Schumann Resonance chart, the larger chart, not just the graphs, the zigzag graphs, but the charts that actually show you, they work in a limited number of colors and hues. The cobalt blue is the background that they frame everything on. And then you'll see a green come on. That is the background electronic energy of planet Earth. Sometimes a little bit man-made. Most of the time it's natural. And so all of the Schumann resonance charts should have that cobalt blue and a little bit of green going on there. When you see anything white, that is a timeline edit process, which is what I call a timeline edit package. It's rather general on the planet. It just drips it all over the planet. It's not specific. It's just a whole edit package. Whatever the core matrix doing prior to regaining the proper matrix, it was dealing with the false matrix and trying to get us out of the false matrix. And it was trying to do that for thousands of years. And it's been taking all this time to get here. So now everything you see is tweaking the proper matrix, which will take thousands of more years, by the way, to really get us back to a place where we are comfortable with ourselves, where we are integrating once again with the ET Earth Consortium. They're here. They've never left. We're not alone. We've never been alone. They've always been here. They are not gods. They're people, and they have their own story. And that story has never been told. They need to tell their own story. And right now, they're in mostly observation mode. They have great capabilities, and they must allow humans to make choices as to what they want this planet to be. The ET Earth Consortium lives here too. This is their planet as well. And they're just actually their descendants. I'm not sure how many of the originals are still here. They have a long lifespan. I don't know personally, but
meaning that there are several different species here with us.
Many. Well, they're here. Yes. Some of them are in other dimensions, but they're here. Like angels are real. They have nothing to do with any human religion. That's just what humans do. They like to hijack and take over ideas. Angels are ETs, just a different type. And they do live in a sort of a pocket dimension to ours. Just like us, they're all sorts. You have your craftsmen, your warriors, your all sorts, and they're fantastic. They can actually morph. They can change what they look like. They can get into your head. They're not fallen. There are no fallen angels. That's just a human thing. It's like they were named fallen because they were truth tellers. We all know where that comes from. So please, there are no such thing as a fallen angel. They help to protect us. They help to nurture us, but they have nothing to do with the panspermia. Their genetics are not part of our genetics. They came after. They came because they wanted to deal with the dark matter aberration. That's their enemy. And so they go where that goes. I like them, but they can be hard. They can be harsh. It depends who you're dealing with. You got your healers, you got your warriors, you've got, like I said, your craftspeople, but they don't interfere. There aren't that many of them. Not everybody has an angel.
I don't know what that looked like to you, that being the Schumann resonance, the before and after this changing of the matrix, changing of the guard, if you like. So what was it that alerted you to this change, the core, true, positive matrix, now coming onto the planet or within it's happening?
Something purposeful was done.
Okay.
I was part of it. Actually, thousands of people all over the world were part of it. It was very deliberate. It was to put up this shield and let the planet sort itself out. We didn't go after anything or anyone. Put up the shield. I knew how to do it. So we put up the shield, thousands of us, and we got it done. We're very ancient, and the knowledge comes from ancient times. And we hoped it would work, and it did. And the only way we would know is it happened. And that's why you're seeing all these changes.
Right. And were the changes obvious to you depicted in the graphics of the Schumann resonance?
Yes, that's so interesting because what I've noticed in studying the Schumann resonance is there are sometimes underlying codes. You can actually see, I have some Schumann resonances, you can actually see little ET faces. You can see their faces, and you can see numbers and codes, and sometimes runic, other languages. They send messages through the Schumann resonance, through frequencies. I don't know whether it's intentional or whether it's just the way that it plays itself out. But when I see angel wings, I know that something really significant is going on, that the dark matter aberration is being defeated. So when I see that, it's a message. Is it intentional? I don't know, but I see it. But I also see other correlating physical factors that are going on that also tell me, whether I ever saw those angel wings or not, that tell me that certain things are going. You asked me in our pre-chat whether I knew what the edits were. Mostly I do. I try not to be too specific about it. I like them just to play out. People who know me know what it is. And the way that the world is today, I have to be cautious about what I say. And it's not important to say. What's important is it's happening and nothing's going to stop it. But like I said, it is up to humans to seize the moment and march forward.
Are the rainbow spike?
There is a certain type of energy spike on the Schumann resonance chart, which actually has all the color. I call it rainbow spikes because they have all these different colors in them. That's a very specific timeline edit, which is broad frequency, which means it's going after something very specific. Let's say something is going on in the world that is going to imminently destroy the planet. That would be what the edit would be about, to an attempt to preempt it from happening, like nuclear. The core matrix does not get involved with human choice. It doesn't mess with people's free will. It lets them choose who they want their rulers to be, even if it's nefarious. It does not interfere with that. The dark matter aberration does. The core matrix is not a sentient being. There is no God ruling over planet Earth. Something I like to call it the cosmic all. That says it all. The cosmic all is the source of the spark of life. It's the beginning of everything. It does not micromanage. It's seeded into all of us, into our genetics, everything that we need to be, except that, like I said, we are resurrected from remnants. So we have to rebuild our genetics. So anyone who wants to alter our genetics in a negative fashion is that DMA stuff. I call that minions. That's not what you want. You want humans to advance. And I'll tell you something else. Humans are not supposed to be doing something so they can leave the planet. The human job is to be physical and to solve the planet's problem, to be the caretakers of planet Earth. That's what humans were originally created to be, the caretakers of the planet, to have all the knowledge that was available to be put into them. When the DMA came onto the planet, that was wiped away. Amnesia. Now you have to get that knowledge back, those memories back. And if anything that I'm saying and anything in our conversation or anything that I do is sparking that memory, yay.
Well, I also want to mention something else that you wrote as part of one of your posts about one of the Schumann Resonance points, the ozone layer first, and then can we go to the ozone layer was playing on my mind. I'd love to hear about that, because when I told somebody that the ozone layer had healed itself, they went, oh, wow. And of course, that would be something that would be measurable.
Just to be completely transparent about this, the ozone layer does heal itself now and then. It comes, it goes. But what happened this time is it really did quite a job of healing itself. And although it's expected to sort of unravel a little bit, this is a timeline edit. This is all because of the proper matrix. If the ozone layer should go to its old bad ways again from the false matrix, that's not a good thing to see. So right now, it's all good as part of the proper matrix. It's the way it should be. You'll notice a lot of other things about the planet correcting itself or moving on to where it's supposed to be. And as long as humans stop messing around with the planet, I have to be very careful here. The planet is still evolving as a planet.
Yeah.
Earthquakes, volcanoes. I mean, just a volcano going off, a big one, can obliterate the sun for a long time and create an ice age, which is what happened. This is natural, not man-made. Yeah. So we want humans to stop the nonsense and do things to help the planet that are genuine, not for someone to be powerful, but to be a caretaker of the planet. And in that, find your power.
That reboot, that 15 hours, you can see this space.
Yeah, where there's no Schumann resonance showing.
Yeah.
Right. Well, okay. This is real simple. What happens is something catastrophic happened to planet Earth. It could be an asteroid strike, a comet strike. It could be nuclear holocaust, a chain of volcanoes going off. Whatever it is, the Earth was destroyed. And the core matrix had to put it back together again. Resurrected. That's happened a number of times to the planet. Sometimes the core matrix can preempt. Those are those rainbow strikes that you see in the Schumann resonance. But other times, human will. Humans do things, and core matrix, as I said, does not alter human will. So it happens, but it's the core matrix's job to keep the planet whole, to keep life going. So it resurrects us. And during that time, we go offline. And then when the core matrix is done doing what it needs to do, it flips us and we go back online. Thousands of years may have passed in that 15 hours, or the blink of an eye could have passed. There is no way of knowing how long it took the core matrix to resurrect us. But that's what a timeline reboot is. It reboots us.
You also commented this was without any catastrophe and any cataclysm. So
well, there was one. There would have been. You know that we're on the brink of nuclear war now. So that's what probably happened.
Okay.
I would say that would be my educated guess.
It's very interesting too, because I also was listening very recently to David Adair. I don't know if you know him. He's
Not personally.
American gentleman. He's a rocket genius. He was a savant as a kid, building these incredible rockets, and he's clearly, he knows about ET and all the rest of that stuff. And in an interview, I think, you can't remember if it was on Gaia, he said, well, you do know that on the 23rd of July 2012, the Earth we shouldn't be here. We heard about, the Mayan calendar, and that's the end and all the rest of that. He said what was going on was that there were three, I can't remember if he said they were CMEs coming from the sun, ejections from the sun facing Earth, and they would have been on course to strike Earth, and that would have been us, adios for the minute, apparently. And then he said, and then something kind of did a minute course correction. And they came really close, like 100 and something, many thousand miles distance. And so they still quite close, but we maintained. So he said something, whatever that was.
That's the core matrix.
Yeah.
But
interesting.
I just want to say that the whole Mayan 2012 thing was never real. There could be something else that's going on, but the whole Mayan thing, that was a no. Today, as we're doing this interview today, there was a far side X flare, huge coronal mass ejection. It won't come anywhere near our planet. And that's the core matrix. It's doing everything in its power to make sure that, but look, even if we had an Earth-directed X flare, it would have to be a very powerful one to mess with our grid. That's not going to happen.
Anyway, I just thought that was fascinating, because I hadn't picked up on that. Yeah.
Everybody has a memory of it in their genetics.
Probably
it's just a matter of some people can touch base with that genetics. Some people will develop into that memory of the genetics. It doesn't have anything to do with somebody's IQ or intelligence or psychic abilities. It's genetics. It's just some people will be able to, but eventually what I'm hoping is that as time marches forward in this particular proper matrix, that more and more and more people will become so aware and get those memories and flashes of memories that what's left of the DMA will have not a chance to recoup itself.
I feel that is absolutely on course too. I really do. And talking about, your work on shielding the planet, I've done some planet shielding work myself before, very much maybe similar to how you've done it. But so we're all on, it's like we've been working in doing these kind of things as well, at least from, the open heart and intention point of view. So, but this has been fascinating. And I just would like to ask if there's anything else you'd like to talk about before we draw to a close.
Oh no, it was delightful. Really, it was. No, I'm good. I'm good. Maybe we'll talk again sometime.
Absolutely. Well, especially if you see anything else that comes up, point people to your website, which is starfire.com.
Right. And also my podcast on YouTube, which is The Time Chronicles with Pigtail Girl and Starfire Tor. Well, thank you so much.
But I really did resonate with this, and I think it's great.
You have to meet my co-host partner, Pigtail Girl. Adore her.
That would be really nice.
Because they will learn a lot if they watch the podcast.
Thank you very much for your time again. And I think this was a little bit different and absolutely fascinating. Starfire Tor, thank you very much. And I look forward to catching up with you another time.
Bye-bye now.